Welcome, everybody, into a new episode of Wiltfong Whiparound. I'm Grace Remington with our Director of Recruiting here at 24/7 Sports, Steve Wiltfong. Lots of topics to get to, but let's start with the top athlete in the 2023 class, and that is Nyckoles Harbor. He's been connected to Michigan, Maryland, South Carolina, and Oregon, and he has a visit with the Ducks this weekend. So, Steve, what can we expect out of that trip?
Well, it's actually next weekend that he's going out to Oregon for his final official visit. The Ducks will get the last swing at Nyckoles Harbor here going into his college decision. And when you talk to sources around the recruitment of various schools or people close to Harbor, you get a lot of Maryland. So Maryland is certainly the school that everybody thinks is strongly in the mix, and a lot of folks think lead going into this official visit to Oregon here. Head football coach Dan Lanning was in home with Nyckoles Harbor this week. First time meeting him in person, and I'm told that in home went real well. Now, Oregon has everything that Nyckoles Harbor is looking for in the school. This is one of the elite sprinters in America. He wants to run in the next Olympics. He's running a track meet in Eugene before. This will be him and his family's first time taking in the football side of things at Oregon, but they're certainly excited to do that. The track program speaks for itself. Track Capital USA, all the history around that program. Oregon's football program on the rise. Junior Adams, receivers coach, was also in home with Dan Lanning. And there's a lot of people that think that Oregon has a chance to make a major move with Nyckoles Harbor. Now, will he go away from home for school? I think that's something that he's excited about and excited to get out to Oregon and learn more. Talking to his dad, I know they're excited to learn about the academics and the opportunities that Oregon presents there because, look, elite track sprinter, elite speed, elite receiver prospect, tight end, mismatch prospect. And then you're seeing the film that is up there right now. He could be an elite edge rusher, outside linebacker if he wanted to be, but offensive side of the ball is what he's keyed in on for his future because for the track goals that he has, it's not realistic for him to put on a bunch of weight and play such a physical style of football on the defensive side of the ball. But he's also a straight A student that has aspirations of being an orthopedic surgeon. So that matters as well when they go out to his official visit to Oregon, what kind of opportunities the Ducks have there. Because when he took his official visit to Maryland, he met with the university president, met with the athletic director, met with one of the top orthopedic surgeons in the state. The opportunity to stay home. He loves the track staff there. Mike Loxley's in touch every day. Maryland and Oregon are two of the fun teams to follow here down the stretch of this 2023 cycle with Maryland. They're also in the mix for four-star linebackers Andrew Harris and Michael Harris out of the state of Florida. And then with Oregon, they have a class that ranks number 10 nationally right now. And Nyckoles Harbor is a realistic option here down the stretch. So is top 247 quarterback Roderick Pleasant, another player that has elite speed, grace, and a guy that when you talk to people around that recruitment, they feel Oregon's very much in the mix of that one as they battle USC, among others, for Roderick Pleasant. So Nyckoles Harbor, big official visit to Oregon in 2 weeks. Jim Harbaugh is expected in next week. Shane Beamer from South Carolina expected in next week. Those are the two other schools that are in the mix for Nyckoles Harbor. But I like where Maryland stands. We'll see what happens with this Oregon visit, and perhaps Oregon can pull it out and add Harbor to the class with what they offer track-wise, football-wise, and off the field. Oh, and Grace, we talked about the big hitters that came out on Nyckoles Harbor's official visit to Maryland. I expect some big hitters to come out on Nyckoles Harbor's official visit to Oregon. And his dad said, "We love Nike." Well, I expect Phil Knight to spend some time with Nyckoles Harbor and his family, and especially his connection to the track program and the football program and everything Oregon. I would imagine that this is a recruit that Phil Knight will love to meet, and they'll get to rub elbows with Nike's founder there. And I think that'll be super exciting for Nyckoles Harbor as well, and something that Oregon has in the bag that no program has here down the stretch. And Nyckoles Harbor's dad, Azuka, talked about how Oregon had some things with their track program and their facilities that no other program has. I expect them to be excited to meet with Phil Knight, and I would imagine he'll be one of the first people waiting for this blue chipper when he gets to Eugene for his official visit.
All right, well, let's go to the top recruit in the 2024 cycle, quarterback Dylan Raiola, who decommitted from Ohio State in December, but the Buckeyes conference rivals are wasting no time trying to land his commitment. What's the latest on Raiola?
Well, my 24/7 Sports crystal ball is on Georgia for Dylan Raiola. I think that, he got a chance to go to the national championship game and see Georgia take it to his sister's school. His sister plays volleyball at TCU. And I talked to Dylan after the visit, or after watching the national title game. Georgia's the cream of the crop. They do everything with such class, and they do everything the right way. The fans are awesome, so passionate about the Dogs, and I love it. And then he wrote, Georgia is different, all caps, exclamation mark. He talked about what Coach Smart has built that program into, two-time national champs, and doing it at his alma mater. He just said it's a special place, and he can't wait to get back to Athens. Look, Dylan Raiola is the #1 recruit in the country. The first program to prioritize him on the trail was Georgia. He's been to Athens numerous times. There was a time where my crystal ball was on Georgia early in his process. So my prediction has come full circle for the Bulldogs with Dylan Raiola in Georgia here, as after his decommitment from Ohio State, Georgia immediately jumps back in the picture and is certainly in a great spot. I think the opportunity to play in the SEC alongside many of the nation's best recruits. Georgia's tracking for maybe the best recruiting class in 24/7 Sports history in 2024. Dylan Raiola would certainly be a big part of that. Who's the school that is perhaps the biggest challenger for Dylan Raiola? Let's look at Nebraska, where his father, his number is retired. You only get 99 numbers, Grace. So when you retire one of them and no one's allowed to wear it again, you don't really want to limit your options, but 54 is hanging up on the stadium there, where his dad was a Remington Award winner, All-American before his 12-year NFL career. His uncle is the offensive line coach at Nebraska. Matt Rule was just out at Chandler High in Arizona to visit and watch Dylan go through a workout. And I talked to his dad afterwards. You could just feel the excitement around him talking about his alma mater and talking to the other coaches. He's like, the new staff appreciates the tradition at Nebraska. And as a guy who's played the game, he said you have to appreciate what Rule has done in reviving programs. He's the best coach in Temple football history, turned them into a conference champ. He then goes in and takes a Baylor program that was mired in controversy and just a lot of just kind of filth around that program. And Matt Rule builds it back up into a contender, has them playing in a New Year's Six game in Nebraska, just how storied they're starving for double-digit wins again. And Matt Rule has a proven track record there. So that's a program that I expect Dylan and his family to visit again as a recruit and get a feel for Matt Rule and that new staff. And we'll see if Nebraska can move the needle, because, again, I like where Georgia stands. And then certainly you got USC in the picture. He's got a great relationship with Lincoln Riley. We know Lincoln Riley's the lead recruiter on any quarterback that he's ever recruited. And he doesn't bat 1,000 at the position, but pretty close. So we'll see. We'll have to keep an eye on USC. And then Oregon. Oregon's the other school in the mix. Coach Will Stein, Coach Dan Lanning going hard there. So those are the 4 schools in play for Dylan Raiola. I think Georgia's the leader going into the next wave of visits, and we'll see what happens.
All right, yeah, we'll see how what kind of pull those family ties have at Nebraska. Jim Harbaugh has returned to Michigan. Seems to be creating some momentum on the recruiting trail as they hope to land the nation's #2 quarterback in Jadyn Davis. And Steve, you just logged a crystal ball for him. So how strongly do you feel about him choosing the Wolverines, and where else is he looking?
Yeah, so that crystal ball I put in for Jadyn Davis was in the fall. I thought that things were trending in a really good direction for Michigan there. He's going to visit North Carolina this weekend. Clemson's under new offensive coordinator Garrett Riley, looking to start building that connection, but he's always had Clemson as a dream school. So there's certainly a program to continue to watch for Jadyn Davis. The visit to North Carolina this weekend is big in the sense, Grace, that I actually thought that Jadyn Davis was done taking visits. So I think it's telling that, like, even though Michigan has gone from clear-cut favorite to the door is still open for some other programs to make a move here. And one program that's trying to push that door wide open and get back into it is Ohio State. Because, look, there was a time where Ohio State was the leader for Dylan Raiola and Jadyn Davis, and Dylan Raiola's timetable at that time was just more accelerated than Jadyn Davis's. He took the spot. Ohio State thought they were done recruiting 2024 quarterbacks. Now they're back in the game. Jadyn Davis, Ryan Day's going in there today, Friday. We're recording this on Thursday, but you're watching it on Friday. So Ryan Day's in the school with new offensive coordinator or promoted offensive coordinator Brian Hartline and quarterbacks coach Corey Dennis. So Jadyn Davis is a guy that Ohio State's looking to make a major move for, and a guy that they've always coveted and had to campus several times. And other programs trying to swing at Jadyn Davis, Penn State and Tennessee. But let's pivot to Ohio State here a little bit. Jadyn Davis is one that perhaps they make a move with here. We'll see where that thing stands after Ryan Day goes in school. We'll have a better feel for Ohio State. And then Jim Harbaugh had a chance to talk with Jadyn Davis this week. So I think after the North Carolina visit, after these coaches come in school and Dabo Swinney's expected next week, we'll have a true feel for, is he really going to take a bunch more visits, or is he closing in on a commitment like I thought he once was? But Ohio State, their eggs aren't all fully in the Jadyn Davis bag. They just offered five-star quarterback Julian Sayin, who is committed to Alabama. I had a chance to talk to Julian Sayin this week. Sayin originally committed to Alabama over his other finalists, LSU and Texas. Ohio State goes out there, visits the school. Corey Dennis offers a scholarship. Julian Sayin tells me, it's exciting to get an offer from such an elite program, but that he's still all Crimson Tide. We'll see if Ohio State continues to push there and see if they can change that narrative. But Julian Sayin right now saying that he's firm with Ohio State. But those are the two guys that Ohio State's all in on now as they try and bring in an elite signal caller in 2024 after losing Dylan Raiola, who reopened his process.
All right, we have a commitment coming up at the end of the month. January 31st, Justin Scott, a top 10 defensive lineman in the 2024 class. Sounds like the Chicago native, Steve, is thinking about staying close to home. You just logged a crystal ball for him. What's the latest on Justin Scott?
So that was Tom Loy, our Notre Dame insider, who logged a crystal ball for Notre Dame. And I thought that when Tom put that pick in, that was where it was trending. He's been to Notre Dame several times. We know his family is really high on the Irish, but Georgia sent Trey Scott up there, defensive line coach, to watch Justin play basketball. They offered him a scholarship, and the Bulldogs are a team to watch in this recruitment moving forward. Dogs 247 insider Rusty Manziel first to report that Justin's expected in Athens next weekend. I talked to some sources that say that Georgia's definitely a program here to keep an eye on moving forward. And I don't think that announcement's going to happen now on January 31st, and we'll see how Georgia moves the needle with Justin Scott. Certainly had Michigan in play there for him, Miami among others, but Notre Dame looked like they were in phenomenal position. But Georgia is a school that's certainly one that has a lot of runway in this recruitment, and we'll see what happens now moving forward with the two-time champs.
Colin Simmons, a top 5 edge rusher in the class of 24, is crystal balled to LSU, but he recently visited Georgia. So what can you tell us about his recruitment?
Yeah, I don't know how good I feel about that LSU prediction now, Grace. And it's kind of similar, like Notre Dame fans should be nervous about Justin Scott going down there and visiting Athens, because Colin Simmons just visited Georgia, and Georgia knocked it out of the park with him and his mom. When you listen to some of the quotes here from Colin and his family coming out of the visit here, Georgia, they definitely have every resource in the coaches to get me to the next level. Simmons said to me, everything stood out. It was nothing I didn't expect. After all, it's the Georgia Bulldogs. And what he said was, Georgia just makes every other school I've been to look like nothing compared to them. And his mom talked about all the boxes it checked for her. Monica McCarley, she said that the mental health staff available for the players there, having Bible study and a church available for the student athletes, graduation rate is important to her, and a diverse coaching staff. And she said that Georgia checked all those boxes, led by Chidera Uzo-Deribe, who's the lead recruiter and would potentially be Colin's position coach. They love him. They loved Kirby Smart. I think that was a tone-setting visit for Colin moving forward. And so LSU, they should be worried about Georgia. Now he wants to visit Tennessee and USC coming up next. Texas, TCU, they've certainly been in the thick of that recruitment. Colorado and Florida are two other schools that his mom mentioned as ones that Colin wants to visit. But this is one of the most electric pass rushers in the class of 2024, 22.5 sacks last year, Grace, in just 15 games, led his team to a state championship. He's one of the most feared guys coming off the edge in this class. And we talked about Georgia having potentially the best recruiting class in 24/7 sports history on the last couple Wiltfong Whiparounds. And Justin Scott and Colin Simmons weren't even names that we mentioned as guys that could end up at Georgia. And here they are. Those are two more elite defensive linemen, front seven players that I think Georgia has a great shot at moving forward.
Yeah, that was a pretty impressive review from him and his mom. Georgia's swiping everyone's prospects lately. All right, let's wrap with Texas. They have a big recruiting weekend coming up. The Longhorns 24 class currently ranks 14th with 3 commits. So who can we expect to see in Austin this weekend?
Yeah, they're looking for their 3rd straight top 5 recruiting class under Coach Sarkisian and company. They're at number 14 right now. Horns 247, Mike Roach, Hudson Standish, and those guys have a good list over there of prospects visiting. And for me, offensive skill players, what kind of stands out to me about what's coming to Texas this weekend. The number 1 running back in America, Jarrett Gibson, out of IMG Academy, expected. Texas offered back in January. And when I look at the elite running back recruiters in the country, I think of Del McGee right away at Georgia. And Georgia's in great shape for Jarrett Gibson. Of course they are, right? Tony Alford at Ohio State, they're a major contender for Jarrett Gibson. Jawan Sider at Penn State is a third that comes to mind. But Tashard Choice at Texas is a rising star on the trail. Obviously was a great player at Georgia Tech, but the way he builds relationships with staff, with recruits and their families, it has really stood out to me. Obviously, they landed Cedric Baxter, arguably a top player at the position in the 2023 cycle. And I think Tashard Choice was a major, major reason why they were able to go into the Sunshine State and land Cedric Baxter. And he has them in the middle of this recruitment with Jarrett Gibson. And I think coming out of this visit, Jarrett Gibson and his family are going to be incredibly impressed with Tashard Choice, his pedigree, his coaching style, and the Texas program in general. And then certainly the track record that Sark has with running backs in his offense. Well, it'll be interesting to see where Texas stands coming out. James Peoples is an in-state running back that I love, rushed for over 2,000 yards out of San Antonio. Texas was one of the first schools to prioritize him. They had him in camp and offered. And he's since blown up. He's going to visit Oklahoma in 2 weeks. A lot of big-time programs pushing for James Peoples, but I think Texas has done a good job early with him. And then 5-star receiver Micah Hudson, Horns 247 reports that he will be there for Texas to have the most prolific offense in college football year in and year out. They have to land elite receivers year in and year out. I love what they landed in last year's cycle with Jonte Cook and Ryan Niblett. If they can follow that up with a guy like Micah Hudson, that'd be huge. But several offered guys expected at Texas this weekend as they have 3 early commits. And this is a weekend that could really set the tone for them moving forward as they chase a 3rd straight top 5 class.
All right, let's get to some mailbag questions now. And thank you, everybody, for sending these in. We are going to start, Steve, with the guy who has been drawing national headlines for the last couple of weeks. This question from Lee Q. Where do you think Jadyn Rashada could land?
Well, there's 3 schools that immediately come to mind, but I'm not saying that these are the only schools that you keep an eye on in the Jadyn Rashada sweepstakes. But there's 3 Pac-12 schools that immediately come to mind. You have Arizona State, right? And Kenny Dillingham, Arizona State's new head coach. He was the lead recruiter for Jadyn Rashada when he was the offensive coordinator at Oregon. I think there were times where Oregon was very high in Jadyn Rashada's recruitment. Arizona State did not sign a quarterback in the 2023 cycle. They did get former Notre Dame starter Drew Pine out of the portal, but they'll be all in on Rashada as soon as they're allowed to be. and he has a long-standing relationship with the blue chip signal caller and his family. So Arizona State's one to keep an eye on. And obviously, look, Oregon had the number 6 offense in the country this past year, averaged over 500 yards per game. And you saw the development that Bo Nix had at the position. I think those are all things that will factor into Arizona State being a player. Cal is another. They have recruited Jadyn Rashada as long as any program. Coach Musgrave and Coach Toller are guys that the family really likes and trusts. It's right in Rashada's backyard. And so I think that Cal is a program that will certainly try and make a move there. And then you have Washington. They did not only did Washington not sign a quarterback in 2023, they're losing guys. You have Sam Heward in the portal. Like, it's a wide open quarterback room after Michael Penix, who decided to come back to Washington. He'll be one of the best quarterbacks in college football this year. And then after that, we don't know who Washington's starting quarterback is going to be. But Washington, they go 11-2 this year. They had the number 1 passing offense in America. They were number 2 in scoring. They have a huge need at quarterback. I would expect them to push heavily for Jadyn Rashada as well. Now, after that, I think, we'll see. I would imagine there's a lot of schools saying, hey, we signed a quarterback in 2023, but is Jadyn Rashada too good to pass up? Should we reach out? I think we'll see a couple of schools emerge that way, but easy to identify those 3 programs as ones that need a 2023 quarterback and have good things to sell to Rashada.
Okay, our next question from Umar. How big of an impact do you think Tennessee's Junior Day made on their top targets?
Well, it sounded like it was an awesome experience, and many of those top targets stayed the night and hung out into Sunday. You had 5-star receiver Ryan Wingo, who I already have forecasted to Tennessee on the crystal ball. His father told me the coaches made it feel like home. I know they're very comfortable at Tennessee. Now, that recruitment has a lot of other major contenders: Texas A&M, Oregon, Colorado, Notre Dame, Penn State, to name a few. Williams Nwaneri, the number 1 defensive lineman in the top 247. He was another one that stayed 2 days, and he told me he had a great time at Tennessee. And coming into that visit, Tennessee was one of the programs recruiting him the hardest. How about the number 1 athlete in the country, Mike Matthews, who could be a difference maker at wideout, could be an outstanding defensive back. But Tennessee recruiting him as an offensive player. He loved the environment and the people in Knoxville. And I talked to his mom, and she loved the culture. She loved the coaching staff. She loved the energy. She loved the way the football program's evolving. And I know we said this on Whip Around recently and on the recruiting show, but I just love the fact that Tennessee, for the first time since the early 2000s, Grace, is finally selling that they've arrived. There's no more, hey, this is what we're going to be. There's several coaching staffs that said, hey, we're going to build this thing back up and we're going to be good again, and Tennessee's going to be Tennessee. And it was all a bunch of crap. But under Coach Heupel, they finally have some tangible proof to say, hey, we won 11 games. We won the Orange Bowl. We beat Clemson. We're just a couple players away from winning the national championship. We were ranked number 1 this year. We beat Alabama. We threw the goalposts in the river. Like, we are legit a contender again. We are on the short list to win the national championship. We have a bona fide chance. And I think that this is a Junior Day that some of the top prospects on campus, like Edwin Spillman, Boo Carter, Marcus Gorey, Jeremiah McClellan, J.J. Harrell, those are all 4-star recruits. They felt it. Tennessee had a top 10 class last year. They're in position to have a top 10 class this year. And again, when you talk about national title contenders, Grace, you can't name that many schools that have a legit chance to like stand up to Georgia and compete on the same field, but Tennessee is one of the few.
Okay, and our final question, this is a good one. 24 new coaches hired this cycle, so you got a lot of options here, Steve. But Tyler Chambers asks, which coach hired this offseason would be your early pick to have the best 2024 class?
Tyler, I'm going to give you 3 just because it's hard to settle in on one. The answer starts with Deion Sanders, though, in Colorado. Obviously, what they've done with Cormani McClain here, 5-star cornerback, and getting him on campus and flipping from Miami, that's impressive. And we know that Colorado is going to be good for an elite prospect or two each cycle, in my opinion, under Deion Sanders. And they're offering all the best players in the country, and I think they're going to get a lot of them on campus. So Colorado is a program that major recruits are looking at. The highest ranked guys are going to come visit. We'll see what happens, and I think we expect Colorado to regularly have top 25, perhaps top 15 recruiting classes under Deion Sanders and the staff. And maybe I'm even underselling what they're capable of. And it's not just Coach Sanders. He's hired a terrific staff of assistants that bring a lot of pedigree to college football. What he did at Jackson State, turning them into a winner, building up a culture, building up a program that had a community, over 50,000 fans at games. They're on national TV now. It was very impressive what he did at Jackson State. And then all the recruits that you talk to, Colorado's now mentioned as a school that these elite prospects want to go visit. Wisconsin is another program. Luke Fickell, I'm bullish on as a recruiter. When he was at Cincinnati, three straight years, he had the #1 group of 5 recruiting class in the country. And I know if you've been following my work for a long time, when I talk about Luke Fickell, the one thing that he said to me when I visited him early at Cincinnati was the head coach has to be the best recruiter in the building. And that's not just building relationships with recruits. That's having your thumb on everything from the evaluation process, who they're offering, who they're allowing to commit. He's in the middle of all of that. In Cincinnati, they played in the college football playoff, and people can't say they were there only by running the table with their schedule. They had the second most players drafted in the NFL draft from that team. So they were incredibly talented. It wasn't just a product of their schedule. They deserved to be there because they were one of the 4 most talented teams in college football that year. And I thought that they gave Georgia hell in that playoff game, or excuse me, it was Alabama. They gave Alabama hell. They played Georgia in the New Year's Six game the year before and dang near knocked Georgia off in that ball game. And then Georgia comes back and wins the national championship the next year. So that shows you that how talented of a football team Cincinnati was under Luke Fickell and company. And I think now at Wisconsin, you see the way they crushed the transfer portal this cycle. 3 quarterbacks. They rebuilt a quarterback room that was among the worst in college football. They landed dynamic receivers. They get a plug-and-play center in Renfro to come up there. So they were massive in the portal. And this is a big recruiting weekend for them, as a matter of fact, in 2024, Grace. They're with the key targets that they're bringing in this weekend. You can read about that on Badger 247. And then Matt Rhule at Nebraska. That's the other one, right? Nebraska, they got a top 25 class here. They're looking for more. They're in the mix for 4-star athlete Demetrius Bell, who's going to take an official visit this weekend. I like where Nebraska stands with him. It was a good portal class for them, headlined by quarterback Jeff Sims, in my opinion. But you just know that the way that Matt Rhule built up Baylor and built up Temple, they also, like Fickell, immersed in the evaluation process. The one thing I loved about what they did at Baylor particularly is they were the first to offer kids, and then those kids ended up being legit. And then those guys do a great job of building meaningful relationships, so that when Tyquan Thornton has all the national heavyweight programs coming in at the end and saying, hey, you know what, Tyquan Thornton is really good. You should come play at these SEC programs. It's impossible for him to say no to his relationship to the guys that he had at Baylor, and he goes to Baylor and obviously is in the NFL now. I just think their early evals, the meaningful relationships that they build, I would expect Nebraska to have top 25 classes every year under Matt Rhule as well. So those 3 head coaches were A+ recruiting hires for what they bring to the table, various ways to get it done. But those 3 programs are going to be fun to watch on the trail under the new staffs.
Yeah, their upcoming season and their upcoming first complete cycles definitely will be exciting to keep an eye on. All right, that's going to do it for us on this episode. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Remember to like this video, please, and subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. We will be back here on Monday, but until then, have a great weekend.